The morning started like any other day on Colony New Haven. Children ran through the streets on their way to school. Farmers checked their crops in the greenhouse domes. Families sat together eating breakfast and talking about their plans for the day. Nobody knew that in just a few hours, everything would end. New Haven was a small colony on the edge of human space. 40,000 people lived there, mostly families who wanted a quiet life away from the crowded cities of Earth. They had built their homes with their own hands. They had planted gardens and opened shops and created a community. It was simple and peaceful and good. Then the Velthari came. The first warning came at exactly 9 in the morning. A young woman named Lisa Grant was working at the communication station when her screen lit up with dozens of alerts. She saw the shapes on her radar and her blood went cold. 12 massive ships had just appeared in orbit above the colony. She immediately sent a message to the colony leader, a kind old man named Samuel Turner. He arrived at the station within minutes, his face pale with worry. "Have they said anything?" Samuel asked. "Nothing," Lisa replied. "They're just sitting there." Samuel tried to open a channel to the alien ships. "This is Colony New Haven. We come in peace. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose." There was no response. The ships just hung there in the sky like dark clouds before a storm. "Maybe they're just passing through," Lisa said hopefully. Samuel shook his head. He had been a diplomat before he retired to the colony. He had dealt with the Velthari before. He knew what kind of species they were. They were an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. They saw other species as insects, things to be stepped on or ignored. "Get everyone to the shelters," Samuel said quietly. "Now." Lisa activated the emergency alarm. Across the colony, people stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. They could see the ships now blocking out the sun. Parents grabbed their children, workers ran from their stations. Everyone moved toward the underground shelters that had been built for emergencies. But they were not fast enough. The first blast hit the center of the colony. The explosion was so bright that people miles away were blinded. Buildings that had taken years to build were turned to dust in seconds. The shockwave knocked people off their feet and shattered every window in the settlement. Lisa was thrown against the wall of the communication station. Her ears were ringing and she could taste blood in her mouth. She pulled herself up and looked at the screen. More blasts were coming. The Velthari ships were firing at everything, homes and schools and hospitals. They were not trying to conquer the colony. They were trying to erase it. Samuel helped Lisa to her feet. His face was covered in cuts, and his left arm hung at a strange angle, clearly broken. But his eyes were focused and determined. "Keep recording," he said. "The universe needs to see what they are doing to us." Lisa turned on every camera in the colony. She broadcast everything to every human ship and station within range. She wanted people to see the truth. She wanted them to remember. For 6 hours, the bombardment continued. The Velthari were thorough. They destroyed every building, every vehicle, every piece of equipment. They targeted the shelters where families were hiding. They left nothing standing. When it was over, 40,000 people were dead. Men, women, children, all of them gone. The only thing left was smoke and ruins and silence. 3 days later, Admiral Patricia Morgan stood in the command center of United Earth Defense. She was 62 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent her whole career trying to build peace with other species. She had believed that understanding and diplomacy could solve any problem. Now she was watching footage of children being burned alive. Her hands were shaking as she turned off the screen. Around her, officers and analysts sat in stunned silence. Some of them were crying. Others looked like they wanted to break something. All of them were waiting for her to speak. "Get me the Velthari ambassador," Patricia said. Her voice was calm, but there was something dangerous underneath it. The ambassador arrived an hour later. His name was Vexthal, and he was a tall, insect-like creature with 4 arms and eyes that showed no emotion. He walked into the meeting room like he owned the place. He did not offer condolences or apologies. He simply stood there and waited. "Explain," Patricia said. Vexthal made a clicking sound that might have been a laugh. "Your colony was built too close to a Velthari shipping route. We warned your species to stay within your designated boundaries. You did not listen. We corrected the problem. You killed 40,000 innocent people. Innocent is a human concept. To us, you are all equally meaningless. Your lives have no value except what we choose to give them." Patricia felt something change inside her. It was like a door that had been locked for her entire life suddenly opened. Behind that door was an anger so deep and so powerful that it scared her, but she did not push it away. She let it fill her. "I want you to deliver a message to your emperor," she said. "And what message would that be?" Patricia stood up and looked directly into those cold alien eyes. "Tell him that humanity tried to be friends. We offered peace and trade and cooperation. We asked for nothing except a chance to exist alongside other species. And your response was to murder our families." She stepped closer to the ambassador. He was much taller than her, but somehow she seemed like the dangerous one in the room. "So here is our new message. We are done asking for permission to exist. We are done hoping that you will treat us fairly. We are done being polite." Vexthal tilted his head. "Is that a threat?" "No," Patricia replied. "It is a promise. You have woken something in humanity that you do not understand. Something old and fierce and patient. We will not forget what you did. We will not forgive. And one day, when you least expect it, we will make you answer for every single life you took." The ambassador laughed again. "You are one small species on one small planet. The Velthari Empire has 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 ships. You cannot hurt us." Patricia smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. "We will see about that." That night, the leaders of every nation on Earth gathered for an emergency meeting. For the first time in human history, there were no arguments about borders or resources or old grudges. Everyone agreed on one simple truth. The Velthari had made a terrible mistake, and they were going to pay for it. The weeks after the massacre were strange and quiet. People on Earth walked around in a daze. They hugged their children tighter. They called old friends they had not spoken to in years. They looked up at the stars at night and wondered what else was out there waiting to hurt them. But underneath that fear, something else was growing. It started as a whisper and became a roar. People were angry. They were not just sad about what happened. They were furious. And that fury was about to change everything. Dr. Nathan Park had worked at the Advanced Research Center for 15 years. He was a quiet man who loved science and hated violence. For most of his career, he had studied ways to use technology for peaceful purposes. He had developed better engines for exploration ships and improved the systems that kept space stations running. But Nathan had another set of files on his computer. Files he had never shown anyone. Weapons so powerful that they scared him. He had created them in theory but never built them because he believed humanity should be better than that. 3 days after New Haven, Admiral Patricia Morgan called him into her office. "I know about your research," she said. "The weapons you designed but never built." Nathan felt his face turn red. "Those were just theoretical exercises. I never intended for them to actually be used." "Things have changed." Patricia pushed a tablet across the desk. It showed images of the destroyed colony, bodies lying in the streets, children who would never grow up. "Can you build them?" Nathan looked at the images for a long time. He thought about his own daughter, about how easily she could have been one of those children. He thought about the Velthari ambassador laughing as he described the massacre as correcting a problem. "Yes," he said finally, I can build them, and I will. Within a week, Nathan had a team of 200 scientists working under him. They had unlimited funding and access to any resource they needed. Their goal was simple: create weapons that could hurt the Velthari. At the same time, General Kevin Torres was put in charge of rebuilding Earth's military. Kevin was 55 years old and had fought in the Mars Uprising 20 years earlier. He knew what war looked like up close. He knew how ugly it could get. But he also knew that sometimes fighting was the only choice left. "We have 43 combat ships," Kevin told his staff during their first meeting. "The Velthari have 700. We have 200,000 soldiers. They have millions. By every measure, we should not be able to win this fight." A young officer named Lauren Mitchell raised her hand. "Then how do we win, sir?" Kevin smiled grimly. "We cheat." He pulled up a display showing Velthari tactics from the past 1,000 years. Every battle followed the same pattern. The Velthari would show up with overwhelming force, crush their enemy, and move on. They had never faced a species that fought back in unexpected ways. "They are bigger and stronger than us," Kevin explained, "but they are also lazy. They have won so many easy victories that they have forgotten how to deal with surprises. We are going to give them a lot of surprises." Earth's factories began working day and night. Old shipyards that had been closed for years were reopened. Mining operations in the asteroid belt increased their output by 300%. Every piece of metal, every drop of fuel, every hour of labor was focused on one goal: getting ready for war. But the preparations were kept secret. The Velthari had spies everywhere, and Patricia knew they could not let the enemy see what was coming. So she created a system of hidden bases and secret communication channels. Everything important was done underground, out of sight. Meanwhile, she played a different game on the surface. She sent messages to the Velthari asking for peace talks. She made public statements about hoping for a diplomatic solution. She acted like humanity was scared and weak and looking for any way to avoid more conflict. The Velthari believed every word of it. "The humans are begging for mercy," Vexthal reported to the Emperor. "They know they cannot fight us. I recommend we ignore them and continue with our expansion plans." The Emperor agreed. To him, humanity was already forgotten. Just another minor species that had learned its place. He turned his attention to other matters and stopped thinking about the small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. That was exactly what Patricia wanted. 6 months passed. On the surface, nothing seemed to change. Earth sent diplomats to useless meetings. Human colonies kept their heads down and avoided attracting attention. The Velthari grew bored and complacent, but underneath that calm surface, a transformation was taking place. Nathan Park finished his first weapon. He called it the Quantum Lance. It was a beam that could pass through any shield the Velthari had ever built. When he tested it on a piece of captured Velthari armor, the metal simply ceased to exist. "How is this possible?" asked one of his assistants. Nathan stared at the empty space where the armor had been. "Because we are fighting for our survival. When humans are desperate, we find ways to do impossible things." Kevin Torres completed the training of his new Special Forces units. They were called Shadow Teams, and they were trained in tactics the Velthari had never seen. Ambushes, sabotage, psychological warfare. They learned to think like predators, to hunt in ways that would terrify any enemy. And across human space, ordinary people prepared in their own ways. Farmers stockpiled food, engineers built hidden shelters, teachers trained their students in survival skills. Everyone knew that war was coming and everyone wanted to be ready. One night, Patricia stood alone in her office looking at a star map. Each dot of light represented a Velthari world. There were so many of them. The task ahead seemed impossible. But then she thought about New Haven. She thought about the 40,000 people who had died simply because they were in the way. She thought about their families who would never see them again. "You think we are weak," she said softly to the empty room. "You think we will give up and accept our place, but you do not know us. You do not know what we are capable of when we have nothing left to lose." She touched the map, her finger resting on a Velthari military base near human space. "You are about to find out." The sleeping giant was awake, and it was hungry for justice. Captain Christopher Blake had been waiting for this moment his entire life. He just had not known it until now. He stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance, the first true warship humanity had ever built. Everything about the vessel was designed for combat. The engines were faster than anything else in human space. The hull was covered in a new type of armor that could absorb energy blasts. And the weapons were something special. "All systems are ready, Captain," reported his second-in-command, a calm woman named Rachel Cooper. Christopher nodded slowly. His eyes were fixed on the view screen where 12 Velthari battlecruisers hung in space. They had jumped into human territory an hour ago, heading toward a small mining colony called Prospect Station. Their mission was obvious. The Velthari Emperor wanted to send another message. He wanted to kill more humans to keep the rest afraid, but this time, things would be different. "Open a channel," Christopher said. The face of the Velthari commander appeared on screen. He was a large creature with mandibles that clicked together when he spoke. His eyes showed nothing but contempt. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed. This is your only warning." Christopher leaned back in his chair. "Actually, I have a different idea. You are one ship. We are 12. There is nothing you can do." "Are you sure about that?" Christopher pressed a button on his armrest. Across the star system, 47 ships suddenly appeared. They had been hiding behind asteroids and in the shadows of moons, completely invisible to Velthari sensors. Now they surrounded the enemy fleet like wolves circling their prey. The Velthari commander's mandibles stopped clicking. For the first time in his life, he looked uncertain. "What is this?" he demanded. "This is called a trap," Christopher replied. "You walked right into it. Now I am going to give you a choice. You can surrender your ships and we will treat your crews fairly, or you can fight and we will destroy every single one of you." The commander made a harsh sound that might have been a laugh. "You think your primitive weapons can hurt us? Our shields will stop anything you throw at us." "Let me show you something." Christopher turned to his weapons officer. "Target the lead ship. One shot. Minimum power." A single beam of light shot from the Vengeance. It was blue and bright and beautiful. It hit the lead Velthari battlecruiser and passed through its shields like they were made of paper. The beam punched a hole clean through the ship's hull. Explosions rippled across its surface as systems failed throughout the vessel. The Velthari commander stared in disbelief. "Impossible. Nothing can penetrate our shields." "Wrong," Christopher said. "Nothing you have ever faced can penetrate your shields. We are something new." For a long moment, nobody moved. The Velthari commander seemed frozen, unable to process what had just happened. His entire understanding of the universe had been turned upside down in a single second. Then he made his choice. "All ships, attack formation, destroy the humans." Christopher sighed. "I gave you a chance. Remember that." The battle began. Velthari ships fired their weapons in every direction. Energy blasts filled the space between the fleets. Any other enemy would have been torn apart in seconds. But the human ships moved in ways the Velthari had never seen. They dodged and weaved, working together like a single organism with many parts. Rachel Cooper coordinated the attack from her station. "Shadow Teams 1 through 5 target their engines. Teams 6 through 10 focus on their weapons. Vengeance will take out their command ship." The human ships struck with precision and speed. They knew exactly where to hit the Velthari vessels to cause the most damage. They had studied captured ships and learned every weakness. Now they exploited those weaknesses without mercy. One by one, the Velthari battlecruisers began to fall. Some exploded in massive fireballs. Others drifted dead in space, their crews desperately trying to repair systems that would never work again. The mighty fleet that had come to spread fear was being torn apart. Christopher guided the Vengeance straight at the command ship. Velthari weapons hit his shields, but the new armor absorbed most of the damage. He got close enough to see the individual windows on the enemy bridge. "Fire everything!" he ordered. The Vengeance unleashed its full power. Quantum lances and plasma torpedoes and kinetic rounds all hit the command ship at once. The vessel's shields flickered and died. Its hull cracked and split. Fire poured from 100 wounds. The Velthari commander appeared on screen one last time. His body was burned and broken. Behind him, his bridge was filled with smoke and screaming crew members. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Christopher looked at him without pity. "You killed 40,000 innocent people and you asked how. You laughed about it. You called it correcting an error. Well, now we are correcting your error." The command ship exploded. The Velthari commander and everyone aboard died in an instant. When the battle ended, all 12 Velthari battlecruisers had been destroyed. The human fleet had lost only 3 ships. It was the most one-sided victory in galactic history, but not in the way anyone had expected. Christopher opened a broadcast channel that would reach every corner of Velthari space. "This message is for the Velthari Emperor. Today, your reminder fleet was completely destroyed. Every single ship, every single crew member. We gave them a chance to surrender and they refused." He paused, making sure his words would be heard. "You thought you could kill our people without consequences. You thought we were too weak to fight back. You were wrong. We are humanity. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we are just getting started." The broadcast ended. Across human space, people celebrated. Strangers hugged each other in the streets. Tears of joy replaced tears of grief. For the first time since New Haven, there was hope. But Christopher did not celebrate. He stood alone on the bridge, looking at the wreckage floating in space. He thought about the Velthari who had died today. Most of them were probably just ordinary soldiers following orders. They had families, too. They had lives and dreams and fears. War was ugly. Christopher knew that better than anyone. But sometimes ugly things were necessary. Sometimes you had to become something hard and fierce to protect the people you loved. He thought about New Haven. He thought about the children who would never grow up. He thought about the families who had been erased from existence. "This is for you," he said quietly. "This is all for you." Then he turned and walked off the bridge to prepare for the next battle. The war had only just begun. 3 years had passed since the first battle. 3 years of blood and fire and sacrifice. 3 years of a war that nobody thought humanity could survive. But they had survived. More than that, they were winning. Commander Amanda Price crawled through a narrow tunnel beneath the surface of Velthari Station 7. Her team of 12 resistance fighters followed close behind. They had been on this occupied world for 6 months, living in the shadows, striking when the enemy least expected it. Amanda had changed a lot since the war began. She used to be a teacher on a small colony, spending her days helping children learn to read. Then the Velthari came and took everything. They captured her colony and forced the humans to work in their factories. They treated people like machines, using them until they broke and then throwing them away. But Amanda refused to break. Instead, she learned to fight. "Target is 50 meters ahead," whispered her second-in-command, a former farmer named Derek Collins. "2 guards at the entrance, 4 more inside." Amanda nodded. She pulled a small device from her pack. It was one of Dr. Nathan Park's inventions, something he called a pulse grenade. It would knock out all Velthari technology within 100 meters. "On my signal," she said. They moved forward in perfect silence. The Velthari guards never saw them coming. One moment they were standing watch, bored and careless. The next moment they were on the ground, unconscious from the tranquilizer darts that hit their necks. Amanda activated the pulse grenade. Every light in the facility went dark. Every alarm system failed. Every communication device stopped working. "Move!" she ordered. Her team rushed into the building. They found the Velthari officers inside, stumbling around in confusion, unable to understand why their technology had stopped working. The resistance fighters took them down quickly and quietly. In the center of the facility was their target, a massive computer core that controlled all Velthari operations in this sector. Troop movements, supply shipments, communication codes, everything was stored here. Derek connected a device to the computer. Within seconds, he was downloading everything. "Got it," he said. "This information will save thousands of lives." Amanda allowed herself a small smile. This was how humans fought the war. Not with massive fleets and overwhelming force, but with small teams doing impossible things. They struck from the shadows and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Across the galaxy, Admiral Patricia Morgan received the intelligence from Amanda's team. She was on the mobile command ship Defiance, coordinating the entire war effort. 3 years of constant stress had aged her, but her mind was still sharp and her will was still strong. "This is excellent work," she said to her staff. "With this information, we can predict their movements for the next 3 months." Her aide, a young man named Stephen Grant, handed her another report. "Admiral, we have received another message from the Velthari Emperor. He is requesting peace talks." Patricia read the message. The terms were insulting. The Velthari wanted humanity to give up all the territory they had captured. They wanted Earth to pay tribute. They wanted everything to go back to the way it was before. "Send our response," Patricia said. "Tell them we will accept peace when they agree to war crimes trials for their military leaders. Tell them we want independence for every species they have conquered. Tell them we want reparations for New Haven." Stephen hesitated. "They will never agree to those terms." "I know, but someday they will realize they have no choice." Patricia turned to a star map on the wall. It showed the current state of the war. 3 years ago, humanity had controlled a tiny corner of the galaxy. Now their influence was spreading, not just because of military victories, but because of something even more important: hope. Other species had seen humans stand up to the Velthari and survive. They had watched this tiny civilization fight back against an empire that had seemed unbeatable. And they had started to believe that they could do the same thing. On a dozen worlds, rebellions were breaking out. Species that had been conquered centuries ago were rising up. They used the same tactics that humanity had pioneered. They struck from the shadows. They refused to give up no matter how bad things got. The Velthari Empire was burning, and the fires were spreading faster than anyone had expected. On Velthar Prime, the Emperor was furious. He had ordered complete mobilization of all his forces. Every ship, every soldier, every resource was being thrown at the human enemy. But it was not enough. "How is this possible?" he screamed at his generals. "They are one species. We have conquered hundreds. Why can we not crush them?" His senior advisor, an old Velthari named Kethral, spoke carefully. "Because they fight differently than any enemy we have faced. They do not follow the rules of war that we know. They adapt and change and find new ways to hurt us. Every time we think we understand them, they surprise us again. Then learn faster. Find their weaknesses. Destroy them. We have tried, my Emperor, but they seem to have no weaknesses. Or rather, their weakness is also their strength. They care about each other so much that they will do anything to protect their own. That makes them unpredictable. That makes them dangerous." The Emperor slammed his fist against the wall. "I want the humans dead. All of them. Every last one." But even as he spoke those words, He felt something he had never felt before. A cold sensation in his stomach, a tightness in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. He was afraid of the humans. This small species from a small planet had taught the mighty Velthari Empire to feel fear. Back on the Defiance, Patricia received a message from Captain Christopher Blake. His fleet had just won another battle, destroying a Velthari supply convoy that would have fed their armies for months. "Good work," she told him over the communication channel. "Every victory brings us closer to the end." Christopher's face was tired on the screen. He had been fighting non-stop for 3 years. "Admiral, do you think we can actually win this war? Not just survive it, but actually win?" Patricia thought about the question for a long time. "I think we already have won the most important part. We proved that we would not give up. We proved that humans will fight for each other no matter the cost. Whatever happens next, that cannot be taken away from us." She looked out the window at the stars. "But yes, I think we will win the rest of it too. Not because we are stronger or smarter, but because we have something they do not have." "What is that?" Patricia smiled. "Each other. We fight for our families, our friends, our neighbors. They fight for power and conquest. In the end, our reason is stronger than theirs." She cut the communication and returned to work. There were still battles to plan and decisions to make. The war was not over yet, but the end was coming. Everyone could feel it. The final battle took place above Velthar Prime, the heart of the enemy empire. 5 years of war had led to this moment. 5 years of sacrifice and loss and determination had brought humanity to the doorstep of their greatest enemy. Admiral Patricia Morgan stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, the flagship of the combined human fleet. Around her, officers from every nation on Earth worked side by side. Old rivalries had been forgotten long ago. Now they were simply human, united by a common purpose. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her tactical officer. Patricia looked at the view screen. The Velthari had gathered everything they had left. 2,000 warships hung in space, forming a wall between humanity and their homeworld. It was the largest fleet in the history of their empire. Humanity had brought 400 ships. They were outnumbered 5-1. "Open a channel to the Emperor," Patricia ordered. The face of Emperor Krixtal appeared on screen. He looked older than the last time they had spoken. The war had taken a toll on him too, but his eyes still burned with hatred. "Admiral Morgan," he said coldly, "you have come far. But this is where your journey ends. My fleet will crush you here, and then we will burn Earth to ashes." Patricia shook her head slowly. "You still do not understand us. After all this time, after everything that has happened, you still think this is about who has more ships or bigger weapons. Then what is it about? It is about will. It is about how far a species will go to protect what they love. 5 years ago, you killed 40,000 of our people because they were in your way. You thought that would teach us to be afraid. Instead, it taught us that we had nothing left to lose." She stood up from her chair. "Every person in this fleet has lost someone to your empire. Parents, children, friends, lovers. We carry their memory with us into this battle. We fight for them." Krixtal made a clicking sound of contempt. "Sentiment will not save you. No, but it will make us impossible to defeat, because we are not fighting to conquer or to rule. We are fighting to make sure that what happened to New Haven never happens to anyone else ever again. That is a cause worth dying for." The channel closed. Patricia turned to her crew. They were all looking at her, waiting for her words. "I am not going to lie to you," she said. "Some of us will not survive this day. The Velthari have more ships and more guns. By any logical calculation, we should not be able to win." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "But humanity has never been very good at logical calculations. We have always found ways to do impossible things when it mattered most. This is one of those moments. This is our chance to change the galaxy forever. She raised her hand. For New Haven, for everyone we have lost, for our children and their children, today we end this war. For humanity! The crew shouted as one. All ships, attack! The battle began. Human ships charged forward into the Velthari fleet. Energy blasts filled space with deadly light. Ships exploded on both sides. The noise of combat filled every communication channel. Captain Christopher Blake led the assault from the front. His ship, the Vengeance, had been repaired and upgraded dozens of times over the years. It was scarred and patched and held together in some places by little more than hope, but it was still fighting. "Stay focused," he told his crew as they dodged through enemy fire. "Remember your training. Watch out for each other." Around him, human ships moved with perfect coordination. They had practiced these maneuvers 1,000 times. They knew exactly what to do. More importantly, they trusted each other completely. The Velthari fought hard. They had numbers and firepower. They took down human ships one by one, but every time a human vessel was destroyed, the others fought even harder. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They just kept pushing forward. Hours passed. The battle raged across the entire system. Both sides lost hundreds of ships. The space around Velthar Prime was filled with wreckage and debris. And then something unexpected happened. A Velthari cruiser broke formation and jumped away. Then another and another. Word spread through the enemy fleet that other conquered species had launched coordinated attacks across the Empire. Rebellions were breaking out everywhere. The Velthari were being attacked on 100 fronts at once. The Emperor ordered his ships to hold position, but fear had taken root. Ships began to flee, their captains deciding that survival was more important than loyalty. The mighty Velthari fleet began to fall apart. Christopher saw the opening. "All ships, push through to the command vessel. End this now." The human fleet surged forward. They cut through the remaining Velthari defenses like a knife through paper. Within minutes, they had surrounded the Emperor's flagship. Patricia opened a final channel. "Emperor Crixtal, your fleet is scattered. Your empire is burning. You have lost. Surrender now, and we will show mercy to your people." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the Emperor's voice came through, broken and tired. "How? How did you beat us?" Patricia thought about all the people who had fought and died to reach this moment. She thought about New Haven. She thought about her own journey from diplomat to warrior. "Because we fought for each other," she said simply, "and you only fought for yourself." The Emperor surrendered. His flagship powered down its weapons and opened its doors to human boarding parties. Christopher led the team that captured Crixtal himself. The war was over. 1 year later, the peace treaty was signed on Earth in a memorial built on the site where New Haven once stood. Representatives from over 200 species attended, including species that had been conquered by the Velthari for centuries. Ambassador Grace Miller spoke for humanity. She was a survivor of New Haven, one of the few who had escaped the massacre. Now she stood before the galaxy as a symbol of everything humanity had overcome. "We did not want this war," she said. "We only wanted to live in peace alongside our neighbors. But when that peace was taken from us, we discovered what we were truly capable of. We discovered that humans will do anything to protect the people we love." She looked out at the gathered species. "Today we offer our hand in friendship to everyone who will take it. We will help rebuild what was destroyed. We will share what we have learned. Together, we will create a galaxy where no species ever has to fear being erased simply for existing." Her voice grew firm. "But let this war stand as a reminder. Humanity tried being polite. We tried being peaceful. When that did not work, we tried something else. Never mistake our kindness for weakness. Never confuse our patience for surrender. We protect our own." In the front row, Admiral Patricia Morgan watched with tears in her eyes. Beside her sat Christopher Blake, Amanda Price, Nathan Park, and so many others who had sacrificed everything for this moment. They had won, not just the war, but something far more important. They had earned humanity's place among the stars. They had proven that courage and love were stronger than cruelty and power. The galaxy would never forget the lesson that humanity had taught them: be kind, be peaceful, but never ever push humans too far, because when the day comes that humans are done being polite, entire empires will fall.